George Floyd has become the patron saint of injustice. George Floyd has become the patron saint of injustice in the black community. Thank you so much for liking your comments and subscribing to the channel. Please share this with your friends. Smash that like button, smash the subscription bell, share this with everybody you know. We're trying to make sure people understand that they're not victims, that they are empowered for greatness, and all this stuff that's out here that's telling them otherwise is false and will not benefit them in the end. So please, I appreciate that. Share that. The Bible talks about how God hates those who sow discord among the brethren. People that intentionally bring division. The Bible has many scriptures that talk about people who intentionally bring division, because those people are bringing division in order to grab power, to be in control, to take control of things. Recently, I saw that in New York, they had this See Injustice art exhibit in Union Square, where they had statues made of John Lewis, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor. Now, we live in America. People are free to create any kind of art that they desire. And that's the beauty of living in America. You can create any type of expression that you want to tell the message that you want. But as I thought about what was the message behind, in particular, the statues for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, when I read through the meaning behind those statues, the artists mentioned that they were there because they died at the hands of police brutality or injustice. Now, for the Breonna Taylor case, that could be argued that it was her boyfriend that initiated the shooting by the police, because he shot first at the police. But people won't tell you that part of the story. But I'm not here to disparage the memories of Breonna Taylor or George Floyd. I hate when any loss of life occurs at the hands of the police, or at the hands of gang members, or at the hands of doctors. I lament any loss of life. But by seeing these statues, that made me ponder. In the black community, we tend to honor people that in other communities would be dishonored. And I say that, and hear me out, and I say that because the people that have a message that they want us to receive, they want us to receive the message of victimization. They want us to receive the message of we are oppressed. And we are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. But you have to understand something. The reason why they're constantly putting George Floyd and the memory of George Floyd and how he was killed in your face is to remind you of how systemically racist America is, to remind you how systemically unjust America is, which is not true. But they want us to have that in the forefront of our minds, constantly reminding us just how unjust America is. And what's the reason behind it? Like I've said over and over and over again, the people behind these messages, they're using race to bring a wedge to destroy this nation. That's the same message that's behind critical race theory. That's the same message that's behind everything when it comes to Black Lives Matter. It's the same message. And I know that's the message because there will not be any statues or any murals or any paintings to all the children that have been killed by gang violence just this year. There will not be one statue dedicated to the young people that have been killed by gang violence this year. Not one. As far as I know. And if there is, God bless you. But I doubt it. You want to know why? Because there's no message. The message that they want us to receive does not fit that narrative. It doesn't. I recently came across something that was very, very informative to me. I learned that there were a number of Black preachers that were heavily involved in the American Revolution and the founding years of this nation. Some of the names are Reverend Absalom Jones, Reverend Richard Allen, Reverend John Marrant, and Reverend Lemuel Hayes. Just a number. This is just a small example of the Black people that were involved initially in the founding of this nation. And people want us to believe that America is systemically racist. These people preached to predominantly white churches, free people. They were free preachers in the 1700s and 1800s that preached to predominantly white congregations. Here's another example I'll give you. Ever heard of the Reverend Harry Hoosier? You probably haven't, but I bet you heard of Hoosier, Indiana. It's called the Hoosier State. You want to know why it's called the Hoosier State? Because Harry Hoosier ministered to a number of people, but in particular, some of the people that went out west to the Indiana Territory. And when the people out there saw the folks that had encountered Harry Hoosier, they recognized that they had been in contact with this great evangelist. And so they called them Hoosiers. So naturally, that's why Indiana is called the Hoosier State, the Indiana Hoosiers, after Harry Hoosier, a Black pastor, a Black reverend. But we have not learned that. I didn't know that. I recently came across that. I did not know that. But that is intentional. They don't want us to know our true history. Good, bad, and indifferent. The Bible, that's the difference between critical race theory and the Word of God. See, the Word of God is not partial to anybody. For example, it gives you the full life of Solomon. Yes, Solomon was the wisest man that ever lived, but Solomon had a number of different wives that turned his heart away from God. And it talks about that. And he made bad decisions, unwise decisions because of those women. It talks about David, the full life of David. Not just he slayed Goliath, and not just he committed adultery with Bathsheba. It's the whole life. And that's what we want history to teach us, the full spectrum. Yes, we're not here to romanticize about our founding fathers. They were human beings. Yes, they did great things when it comes to the Declaration of Independence and when it comes to the Constitution, but also they owned slaves. They were humans. They were flawed. So we're not here to romanticize them or deify them. And at the same time, with all due respect, we should not be deifying George Floyd or Breonna Taylor simply because they died at the hands of the police. As Black people, we must aspire to higher than that. We are not relegated to the life of victims. We are not relegated to the life of the oppressed. We are not relegated to the life of the oppressed. George Floyd has become the patron saint of injustice. George Floyd has become the patron saint of injustice in the Black community. He has. And like I said, while I'll admit how he died, it was wrong. Flat out wrong. It was wrong. But yet, we have people in the Black community that have died from the hands of other Black people, but yet we do not deify them. We have people that contributed to the founding of this nation, godly men that took up arms and fought for freedom. We do not elevate them. We do not have murals and statues painted and crafted and constructed of them. But yet, because George Floyd died the way he died, he has a statue. The way Breonna Taylor died, she has a statue. To me, those are like graven images. They are there to keep our eyes fixed on them and away from the truth. The truth is, we are not oppressed. We are not victims. We are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. And as long as we continue to have that victim mindset, we will have victim results. As long as we have victim mindset, we will have victim results, oppressed results. And that is intentional. They want to erase history. They want to rewrite this country. They want to tear up the Constitution and remake it in the image of socialism, communism, and Marxism. They want to remake this country in the image of China. They do. That's the only reason people will build and create statues related to somebody who was killed by injustice. That's the only reason. People running around here talking about black people never been free. That's a lie. I'm free. You're free. But you're not free in your mind. You're like the children of Israel, who when Moses was getting the 10 Commandments, they begged Aaron to make them a golden calf because they had an Egyptian mindset. They still had Egypt in their minds. And that's the problem with a lot of us today in the black community. We still have slavery on our minds instead of freedom. So we are bound ourselves, and people are taking advantage of that. They are using that against us by leaking outrage footage, by having a statue made to people that were killed by the police. That's to keep that same mindset, that Egyptian mindset, instead of us being free, being liberated in our minds. We are entangled in our minds, people. We are. We can't stand fast in the liberty where Christ has set us free because our minds are entangled with things from the past. We have to be renewed in the spirit of our minds. We have to renew our minds. We have to renew our minds. We have to. But the people who are pushing this narrative don't want us to. They want us to stay bound. They want us to stay oppressed. They want us to stay victimized because they can use that for their purposes. And their purpose is to overthrow the government. And they will not stop until that occurs. That's why we have to have the right people in office. That's why we have to make sure that justice is served for everybody. And so while I'm not here to bash the memory of George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, not at all. Not at all. But I will say, in the black community, we have a focus problem. We focus more on the criminal instead of the crime. We focus more on the criminal instead of the crime. We do. We always talking about criminal justice reform. What about safety? What about safety in the communities where we live? Let's talk about that. Instead of defunding the police, how about disarming criminals? What about that? What about snitching? There's a no snitch rule. What about saying, nah, this person over here did it, but I know it breaks the code. We can't snitch. There's no snitching. I get it. We can't snitch. And nobody's asking you to snitch, but we're asking you to stand up for your community. That's what we're asking for you. Like the boy that was killed at the bus stop in Louisville, Kentucky a few weeks back. Would there be a statue for him? I'm just asking this question because we have to get our minds renewed and focus on what's real and what can be done to bring true change and lasting changes in our community. And understand the messaging that's behind these statues. Injustice, injustice, injustice. Then we start parroting that. Injustice. We're never been free. I've heard people say that. Man, I've never been free. You're a lie. You're free now. You're free. but you're not freed in your mind. You're still bound by slavery. You're still bound by a victim mindset. You're still bound by oppression. Instead of truly walking out the freedom that you have, you're like in a jail cell and the door's wide open, but you choose to stay inside and claim that you can't get out. That's what it is. The door to the jail is wide open, but you choose to stay in the jail cell and complain about you can't get out. That's where we are. We have to stop this, people. We are not victims. We are not victims. We are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. We have greatness inside of us. Great people helped to form this country. Great people existed way back when there was true injustice in certain parts of this country. Great people did great things, and that same greatness is inside of us. We are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. We are empowered for greatness.